After knee surgery, my daughter-in-law said, "Stay away from the kids, you're a risk." I packed my things and left the house. The next day, I won $10 million in the lottery. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Juanita, and at 72 years old, I thought I had experienced every kind of pain life could offer. I was wrong. 3 weeks after my knee surgery, I was staying at my daughter Avalon's house, trying my best to recover while helping with my 2 grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. The doctor said I needed to take it easy, but sitting idle while watching Avalon juggle work and motherhood felt wrong. I had raised 4 children mostly on my own after their father left, and helping family was simply what you did. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was slowly making my way to the kitchen, using my walker, when I heard Lucas crying in the living room. Emma, only 5 years old, was trying to comfort her little brother. But at 3, Lucas was having one of his meltdowns. "It's okay, mijo," I called out, carefully navigating around the coffee table. My left knee was still tender, and I had to move deliberately. "Abuela is coming." As I reached for Lucas, my walker caught on the edge of the rug. I stumbled slightly, catching myself on the couch arm, but the sudden movement startled Lucas even more. His crying intensified. That's when Sandra, my daughter-in-law, burst into the room like a hurricane. "What are you doing?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I told you to stay seated." "I was just trying to help with Lucas," I explained, still catching my breath from the near fall. "He was crying and Emma couldn't—" "Stay away from the children!" Sandra's voice exploded through the house. "You're a risk! Look at you, you can barely walk without falling over. What if you had been holding him?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, gripping my walker, staring at this woman who had been part of our family for 8 years. Sandra's face was twisted with anger, but there was something else there too, disgust. "Sandra, please," I whispered, aware that both children were now staring at us with wide, frightened eyes. I would never hurt them. I was being careful. "Careful?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You just almost fell. You're old, Juanita. Accept it. You can't take care of children anymore. You can barely take care of yourself." Each word was like a knife twisting in my chest. I looked toward the hallway, hoping Avalon would appear and defend me, tell Sandra she was out of line. But when my daughter finally emerged from her home office, laptop still in hand, she didn't look surprised by the scene. "Mom," Avalon said, her voice tired and cold. "Sandra's right. Maybe you should just rest in your room until you're feeling better." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my daughter, my Avalon, whom I had sacrificed everything for, who I had worked 3 jobs to put through college, who I had supported through every heartbreak and celebration of her life. "Avalon," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I was only trying to help. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I know, Mom, but Sandra has a point. The kids' safety comes first." Sandra crossed her arms, satisfied with her victory. "Exactly. And honestly, Juanita, having you here is stressful for everyone. We're constantly worried about you falling, or worse." The room fell silent except for Lucas's sniffling. Emma had wrapped her small arms around her brother protectively, both children sensing the tension but not understanding it. Something inside me cracked at that moment. Not my bones or my aging body, but something deeper. My spirit, maybe. My heart, definitely. I had given everything to this family. After Avalon's father left us when she was 12, I worked myself to the bone to provide for her. I cleaned offices at night, waitressed during the day, and sold my jewelry to pay for her college textbooks. When she got married, I was so proud. When she had children, I thought I would finally get to be the grandmother I had always dreamed of being. Instead, I was being treated like a burden, a dangerous burden. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I'll pack my things." Neither Avalon nor Sandra protested. They just watched as I slowly made my way to the guest room, my walker clicking against the hardwood floor with each painful step. It took me an hour to pack everything I had brought. My medications, my comfortable clothes, the small photo album I kept by my bedside. As I folded each item, I felt pieces of my heart breaking off and falling away. When I emerged with my suitcase, Avalon was waiting by the front door. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, might say this was all a misunderstanding. "I'll call you later, Mom," she said instead, not offering to help with my bag or even asking how I would get home. I called a taxi and waited on the front porch, feeling like a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. Through the window, I could see Sandra organizing toys while Avalon worked on her laptop. Normal life resuming without me. As the taxi pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Emma's face pressed against the living room window. She raised her small hand in a wave, and I had to turn away before she could see me crying. The ride to my small apartment felt endless. With each mile, the reality sank in deeper. I was alone again, just like I had been for so many years. But this time felt different. This time, I wasn't just alone. I was unwanted. That night, lying in my own bed for the first time in weeks, I stared at the ceiling and wondered where everything had gone so wrong. When had I become someone to be feared instead of loved? When had helping become hurting? I closed my eyes and tried to push away Sandra's words, but they echoed in my mind. "You're old, Juanita. Accept it." Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to accept that my usefulness had expired. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed feeling like I had aged another decade overnight. Every joint ached, not just from the surgery, but from the weight of yesterday's humiliation. My small apartment, which had felt cozy before, now seemed to echo with loneliness. I made myself coffee with shaking hands, the silence pressing against my ears. For 3 weeks, I had been surrounded by the chaos of family life. Children laughing, cartoons playing, Sandra's constant chatter about her yoga classes and book club meetings. Now, the quiet was deafening. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed an old woman I barely recognized. When had my cheeks become so hollow? When had my eyes lost their spark? Sandra's words came back to me. "You're old, Juanita. Accept it." Maybe I was fooling myself, thinking I still had something to offer. I spent the morning organizing my medications and trying to distract myself with household tasks, but everything reminded me of what I had lost. The sweater I had been knitting for Lucas sat unfinished on my kitchen table. The children's book I had bought for Emma remained wrapped in cheerful paper. Around noon, I decided to venture out for groceries. The walk to the corner store was more difficult than I remembered. My knee protested with each step, and I found myself pausing frequently to catch my breath. An elderly man offered me his arm as I struggled with the store's heavy door, and I realized with a start that this was my reality now. I was the old lady others helped out of pity. At the checkout counter, Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B was buying her usual lottery tickets. She had been playing the same numbers for 15 years, she once told me, convinced that persistence would eventually pay off. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked, noticing my walker. "I heard you had surgery." "Getting better," I lied, not wanting to burden her with the truth about yesterday. She studied my face with the keen perception of someone who had lived through her own share of disappointments. "You know what you need? A little excitement in your life." She turned to the cashier. "Give her 5 scratch-offs and a Mega Millions ticket." "Oh, no, I don't," I started to protest. "My treat," she insisted, pressing the tickets into my hand. Sometimes the universe has a plan we can't see yet. Back in my apartment, I set the lottery tickets on my kitchen counter and forgot about them. The rest of the day crawled by. I tried watching television, but every commercial seemed to feature happy families with loving grandparents. I attempted to read, but my mind kept drifting to Emma and Lucas. Were they wondering where I had gone? Did they miss me at all? Evening came, and my phone remained silent. Not a single call from Avalon checking if I had made it home safely. Not even a text message. The silence felt like another slap across my face. I went to bed early, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sandra's disgusted expression and heard Avalon's cold voice agreeing that I was too dangerous to be around her children. The next morning brought no relief. I woke with the same heaviness in my chest, the same sense that my purpose in life had been stripped away. I made breakfast without appetite and sat at my small table, staring out the window at the world continuing without me. That's when I remembered the lottery tickets. I found them where I had left them, crumpled slightly from being pressed against Mrs. Rodriguez's grocery bag. The scratch-offs yielded nothing. $1 here, $2 there. Barely worth the cost of the tickets. I was about to throw them away when I remembered the Mega Millions ticket. I had to search online for the winning numbers, my fingers moving slowly across my old tablet's screen. 7, 14, 23, 35, 47, with Megaball 12. I read my ticket, then read it again, then a third time, certain I was making a mistake. 7, 14, 23, 35, 47, Megaball 12. The numbers matched exactly. I sat back in my chair, the ticket trembling in my hands. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. I had spent my entire life being practical, careful, making do with less. I had never even bought a lottery ticket before yesterday. The jackpot was $10 million. $10 million. I called the lottery office 3 times before I believed the confirmation. Yes, the ticket was valid. Yes, I was the sole winner. Yes, my life had just changed forever. After hanging up from the final call, I sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at the small piece of paper that represented more money than I had ever imagined having. The irony wasn't lost on me. Yesterday, I had been told I was worthless, a burden, someone to be discarded. Today, I was worth $10 million, but the money felt strange in my hands, like it belonged to someone else. What was I supposed to do with it? For 72 years, I had lived modestly, saved carefully, made every dollar stretch. Now I could buy anything I wanted, go anywhere I pleased. The thought should have been exciting, but instead, it felt oddly empty. All the money in the world couldn't give me back what I really wanted, my family's love and respect. As I sat there holding my winning ticket, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Soon, very soon, they would find out about this money, and when they did, I would discover who my family really was. I carefully folded the ticket and placed it in my jewelry box next to my late mother's wedding ring. For now, this would be my secret, but secrets, especially ones this big, never stayed hidden for long. My phone sat silent on the counter, but I had a feeling that was about to change. The question was, when Avalon finally called, would it be because she missed her mother, or because she needed something from the newest millionaire in the family? Deep down, I already knew the answer, and it broke my heart all over again. It took exactly 4 days for them to find out. I was sitting in my living room Thursday morning, still processing the reality of my situation when my phone rang. Avalon's name appeared on the screen, and for a foolish moment, my heart leaped with hope. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she had realized how cruel they had been. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was different, warmer than it had been in months. "How are you feeling?" "I'm managing," I said carefully. Good, good. Listen, I was wondering, would you like to come over for dinner tonight? The kids have been asking about you. The lie rolled off her tongue so easily it made my stomach turn. Emma and Lucas were 3 and 5 years old. If they had been asking about me, it was because they were confused about why Abuela had suddenly disappeared from their lives. That's very kind, but I'm not sure Sandra would appreciate. "Oh, don't worry about Sandra," Avalon interrupted quickly. "She feels terrible about the misunderstanding. She wanted me to tell you how sorry she is." Misunderstanding. That's what they were calling it now. Before I could respond, I heard Sandra's voice in the background. "Tell her we miss her so much." The performance was Oscar-worthy, but I knew exactly what had prompted this sudden change of heart. Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B worked part-time at the grocery store where Sandra shopped. Small neighborhoods have big mouths, and news travels fast when someone wins $10 million. "I appreciate the invitation," I said slowly, "but I think I need more time to recover." There was a pause, then Avalon's voice became more insistent. "Mom, we really need to talk. As a family. It's important." "What about?" Another pause. "Just things. Family things. Can't we work this out? You're my mother and the kids need their grandmother. The kids need their grandmother. 3 days ago, their grandmother was too dangerous to be around them. Now suddenly, she was needed." "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. The phone rang again immediately. This time, it was my nephew Carlos, whom I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. "Tia Juanita, I heard the most amazing news. Is it true? Did you really win the lottery?" At least he was honest about why he was calling. "News travels fast," I said. "Oh my God, it is true. Tia, I'm so happy for you. You deserve this after everything you've been through. Listen, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I've been thinking about you so much lately. The calls continued throughout the day. My sister Rosa, who lived in Phoenix and only called on Christmas and birthdays. My ex-brother-in-law Miguel, who hadn't spoken to me since his divorce from Rosa became final. Distant cousins I had forgotten existed suddenly remembered my phone number. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Initial excitement and congratulations, followed by casual mentions of their current financial struggles, then not-so-subtle hints about how wonderful it would be if we could catch up soon. By evening, my phone had rung 53 times. I had stopped answering after the 20th call. Friday morning brought visitors. I was having my coffee when I heard cars pulling into the parking lot outside my apartment. Through the window, I saw Avalon's SUV and Sandra's white BMW. They had brought reinforcements. I could see 2 car seats in the back of Avalon's vehicle. The knock on my door was gentle, almost timid. "Mom, it's us. We brought the kids." I opened the door to find Emma and Lucas standing in front of their mother and Sandra, both children holding small bouquets of grocery store flowers. Emma's gap-toothed smile was genuine, but the adults behind her wore expressions of carefully practiced contrition. "Abuela!" Emma launched herself at my legs, nearly knocking me off balance. "We missed you so much." Lucas, more reserved, offered me his flowers with a shy smile. "For you, Abuela." My heart melted despite everything. These children weren't part of their parents' manipulation. They were innocent victims of it. "Thank you, Miss Amores," I said, accepting their gifts. "They're beautiful." Sandra stepped forward, and I had to admire her acting skills. Her eyes were actually glistening with unshed tears. "Juanita, I owe you such an enormous apology. I was stressed about the kids, about Lucas's tantrum, and I completely overreacted. I said horrible things that I didn't mean." "We all make mistakes when we're overwhelmed," I replied neutrally. Avalon moved closer. "Mom, we were hoping we could come in and talk. Really talk. We miss having you around." I let them in, watching as Sandra made a show of admiring my small apartment. "This is so cozy, Juanita, so charming and homey." The same apartment she had once described as cramped and depressing, when Avalon had suggested I might be happier living there instead of their guest room. We sat in my living room, the children immediately gravitating toward the toy box I kept for their visits. Avalon and Sandra positioned themselves on my couch like a united front. "The house feels empty without you," Avalon began. "We realized how much you contribute to our family. The kids have been asking for you every day," Sandra added. "Lucas keeps looking for you at breakfast time." I listened to their rehearsed speeches, watching their body language. Avalon kept glancing at Sandra for confirmation that she was saying the right things. Sandra's smile never quite reached her eyes, and she couldn't seem to stop looking around my apartment, as if calculating its value. "We want you to come home," Avalon said finally. "We want you to move back in with us. Permanently this time." "The guest room is yours for as long as you want it," Sandra added quickly. "We could even look into making some modifications to make it more comfortable for you." Home. They wanted me to come home. 3 days after throwing me out like garbage, they wanted me back. The timing was remarkably coincidental. "That's very generous," I said carefully, "but I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of activity. My recovery is going slowly." Sandra leaned forward earnestly. "Oh, but we could help with that. We could hire a private nurse, get you the best physical therapy money can buy. Whatever you need. Whatever I need." Suddenly, money was no object for Sandra, who had complained just last month about the cost of Emma's dance classes. "We just want to take care of you," Avalon said, reaching for my hand. "We're family. That's what families do." I looked at my daughter's face, searching for some sign of genuine remorse or love, but all I could see was calculation, desperation thinly disguised as affection. "I need some time to think about it," I said finally. Their faces fell slightly, but Sandra recovered quickly. "Of course. Take all the time you need. We just want you to know that we love you and we're here for you." After they left, I sat in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the flowers my grandchildren had brought me. The sweet gesture felt tainted by their parents' ulterior motives. My phone rang again. This time it was my oldest son, David, calling from Seattle. We had barely spoken since his father's funeral 5 years ago. "Mom, I heard about your lottery win. Congratulations. I was thinking maybe it's time I came for a visit. I hung up without saying goodbye and turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I understood why lottery winners often spoke about the curse of sudden wealth. The money hadn't just changed my bank account, it had revealed the true nature of everyone around me. And the truth was uglier than I had ever imagined. The weekend brought a parade of visitors that would have been comical if it hadn't been so pathetic. Saturday morning, Avalon showed up alone with breakfast from my favorite bakery. The expensive one she usually claimed was overpriced for what you get. She had brought fresh pastries, real orange juice, and my preferred coffee blend that cost $12 a pound. I thought we could have a nice quiet breakfast together, she said, unpacking everything on my kitchen table, just like we used to when I was little. Except we had never done this when she was little. When she was little, breakfast was whatever I could afford and prepare quickly before rushing to my first job of the day. As we ate, Avalon reminisced about memories that seemed suspiciously polished, as if she had been rehearsing them. She talked about how grateful she was for all my sacrifices, how she had always admired my strength, how she wanted to make sure I was comfortable in my golden years. You know, Mom, she said, buttering a croissant with deliberate care. Sandra and I have been talking, and we think maybe we rushed things the other day. Maybe what you need isn't just to come back to our house, but to have your own space where you feel independent. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? We were thinking we could help you buy a nicer place. Something bigger, with better accessibility features. Maybe one of those new senior living communities with the golf courses and swimming pools. There it was. They wanted to park me somewhere comfortable and out of the way. Somewhere I could live like a wealthy widow while they managed my affairs. That sounds expensive, I said mildly. Avalon waved a dismissive hand. Money shouldn't be a concern anymore, right? We just want you to have the best of everything. After she left, I sat at my table looking at the empty bakery bags and fancy coffee cups. The breakfast had probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries for a week, but it felt hollow, purchased rather than prepared with love. Sunday brought Sandra and the children again, this time with a photographer friend who happened to be in the neighborhood. We thought it would be nice to get some updated family photos, Sandra explained as her friend set up professional lighting in my small living room. For Christmas cards, you know. The photo session was surreal. Sandra posed us like we were a loving, close-knit family, with me prominently featured in the center of every shot. The same woman who had screamed at me to stay away from her children was now arranging those same children on my lap for pictures. These will be beautiful, the photographer gushed. You can see how much love there is in this family. Love. If that's what this was, I wondered what hate looked like. That evening, I made a decision. I called Avalon and invited them all to dinner at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant downtown, where they had taken me for my 70th birthday. The same restaurant Sandra had complained was too fancy for a casual family dinner. How wonderful, Avalon exclaimed. We'll be there. Should we make it for 6 people? 6? Well, you, me, Sandra, and the kids. Plus, I thought maybe David could join us if he flies in from Seattle. David, my son who hadn't visited in 5 years, was suddenly planning a trip. Actually, I said, let's keep it small. Just the 4 of us adults. I'll arrange for a babysitter for Emma and Lucas. Tuesday evening, I arrived at Romano's 30 minutes early and requested a quiet table in the back corner. I wanted privacy for what I was about to do. Avalon and Sandra arrived together, both dressed more formally than usual. Sandra was wearing a dress I had never seen before, and Avalon had clearly just come from the hair salon. They were presenting their best selves, like job candidates interviewing for positions they desperately wanted. Mom, you look wonderful, Avalon said, kissing my cheek. That's a beautiful outfit. It was the same cardigan and slacks I had worn to dozens of family gatherings. But suddenly, everything about me was beautiful and wonderful. We ordered drinks and made small talk about the weather, the children, Sandra's book club. The conversation felt artificially light, as if we were all avoiding the elephant in the room. Finally, as our entrees arrived, I decided to address it directly. I know about the lottery, I said simply. The effect was immediate. Avalon's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Sandra's face went pale, then flushed bright red. I'm sorry? Avalon said weakly. The lottery ticket I won. The $10 million. I know that you know about it. Sandra recovered first, her voice taking on an indignant tone. Juanita, I hope you don't think our recent visits have anything to do with— Of course they do, I interrupted calmly. And that's fine. I understand why you're here. They looked at each other uncertainly, as if this wasn't the reaction they had prepared for. Mom, Avalon said carefully, we're here because we love you and we made a mistake. Yes, we heard about your good fortune and we're happy for you. But that's not why— Stop, I said quietly. Please, don't insult my intelligence. The table fell silent. Around us, other diners continued their conversations, but our corner felt like it existed in a bubble of tension. I took a sip of my wine and studied their faces. For 3 weeks, I lived in your house recovering from surgery. For 3 weeks, I tried to help with the children and contribute to the household. And what happened? Neither of them answered. Sandra told me I was a risk. You, Avalon, agreed with her. You both made it clear that I was a burden, someone to be managed and contained. And when I stumbled near Lucas, I was thrown out like garbage. Mom, that's not— Avalon started. It is exactly what happened, I continued. And for 4 days after that, my phone was silent. Not one call to check if I was okay. Not one text to see if I needed anything. Nothing. Sandra shifted uncomfortably in her chair. We were giving you space to recover. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Space. Is that what we're calling abandonment now? Avalon reached across the table toward my hand, but I pulled it back. Mom, I know we handled things badly, but we want to make it right. We want to be a real family again. A real family, I repeated. That's interesting timing, don't you think? I become a millionaire, and suddenly, you want to be a real family. The waiter approached to refill our water glasses, and we all fell silent until he moved away. When I spoke again, my voice was soft but clear. I want you to understand something. I'm not angry about the money. Money reveals character. It doesn't create it. What I'm angry about is that it took $10 million for you to remember that I'm your mother. Sandra's composure finally cracked. That's not fair, Juanita. We've always cared about you. Have you? I met her eyes directly. When you screamed at me to stay away from your children, was that caring? When you called me a risk, was that love? She looked away, unable to maintain eye contact. I turned to Avalon. And you, my daughter. When Sandra humiliated me in front of your children, you stood there and agreed with her. You chose your wife over your mother without a moment's hesitation. Tears began to form in Avalon's eyes. I was trying to keep the peace. I thought if I just let things calm down— You were protecting your comfortable life, I said simply. And that's understandable, but don't pretend it was something noble. The truth hung between us like a sharp blade. For the first time since this whole charade began, they had no practiced responses, no rehearsed explanations. So what happens now? Sandra asked finally, her voice small. I smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. Now we finish our dinner, and then we'll see who you really are when you think the money might disappear as quickly as it came. The rest of the meal passed in uncomfortable silence, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The truth was finally out in the open, and tomorrow, the real test would begin. The week following our dinner at Romano's was when I truly understood the power of money. Not to buy things, but to reveal the depths of human desperation. Wednesday morning, I received a formal letter from Sandra. Not a text message or phone call, but actual stationery with her embossed initials at the top. She had written what amounted to a business proposal disguised as a heartfelt apology. Dearest Juanita, it began, I have spent sleepless nights reflecting on my inexcusable behavior. I realize now that I was projecting my own fears and anxieties onto you, and I deeply regret the pain I caused. 3 pages of perfectly crafted remorse followed, ending with a suggestion that perhaps I might consider investing in their family's future by helping them purchase a larger home where I could have my own wing, complete with a private entrance and caregiver suite. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a growing file I had started labeled Evidence. Thursday brought a visit from David, who had indeed flown in from Seattle. My eldest son stood on my doorstep with his wife Jennifer, both looking nervous and rehearsed. Mom, you look incredible, David said, embracing me with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt from him since his teenage years. Seattle has been so cold and dreary. This Texas warmth is exactly what we needed. They had brought gifts, expensive wine, gourmet chocolates, a cashmere scarf that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. We sat in my living room making awkward conversation while I waited for the real reason for their visit. It didn't take long. "Mom," David said, settling back in his chair with practiced casualness, "Jennifer and I have been talking about the future, about making sure you're properly taken care of as you get older. We know how independent you are," Jennifer added quickly, "but we also know how expensive healthcare can become. We've been researching some really wonderful assisted living facilities in Seattle, top-tier places with amazing amenities. Near us," David emphasized, "so we could visit every day and make sure you have everything you need." I nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like quite an investment." "Oh, don't worry about the cost," Jennifer waved dismissively. "We've looked into the financing options. With your recent good fortune, it would be very manageable." There it was. They wanted to move me across the country, warehouse me in an expensive facility, and manage my finances while keeping me conveniently close for regular guilt visits. "I appreciate your concern," I said, "but I'm quite happy here." David's face tightened slightly. "Mom, be realistic. You're 72 years old. You just had surgery. What happens when you need more help than you can manage alone?" "Your father asked me the same question 30 years ago," I replied quietly, "right before he walked out on us because taking care of a family was too much responsibility." The comparison hit its mark. David flinched, and Jennifer looked uncomfortable. After they left, promising to check in tomorrow, I sat in my apartment and made a decision. It was time to stop being passive and start taking control of this situation. Friday morning, I called my lawyer, Margaret Santos, whom I had used for my will and a few other simple legal matters over the years. "Juanita, congratulations on your lottery win," she said warmly. "I imagine you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the attention." "That's exactly why I'm calling," I said. "I need your help with something." An hour later, I was in Margaret's office outlining my plan. She listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, her expression growing more intrigued as I spoke. "Are you certain about this approach?" she asked when I finished. "It's unconventional. I'm 72 years old, Margaret. I don't have time for conventional," she smiled. "Very well. Let me make some calls." That evening, I invited the entire family to Sunday dinner at my apartment. Avalon, Sandra, David, Jennifer, and even my sister Rosa, who had driven down from Phoenix to celebrate my good fortune. "How wonderful!" Avalon exclaimed when I called. "Just like old times." Except old times had never included catered food from the city's most expensive restaurant, which is what I ordered for Sunday's gathering. If they wanted to treat me like a wealthy matriarch, I would play the part. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. My small apartment filled quickly with the scent of expensive food and the sound of forced cheerfulness. Everyone arrived bearing gifts and wearing their best clothes, as if this were a job interview rather than a family gathering. I watched them interact throughout the meal, noting how they had formed subtle alliances. David and Sandra bonded over their shared concern for my future security. Rosa and Jennifer compared notes on the best investment strategies for people our age. Avalon flitted between conversations, trying to maintain peace while positioning herself as my primary advocate. As we cleared the dinner dishes, I stood and tapped my wine glass with a fork. "I wanted to thank you all for coming," I began. "It means so much to have family around during this transition period." Nods and smiles all around. "I've been giving a lot of thought to everyone's suggestions about my future, and I've made some decisions." The room went quiet. Every face turned toward me with eager anticipation. First, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I won $10 million. And yes, I know that's why most of you are here. A few people started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Please, let me finish. I'm not angry about it. I understand that money changes relationships, sometimes in ugly ways. What I want to know is who you really are underneath all these sudden displays of affection." David frowned. "Mom, what are you saying?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of envelopes, each one labeled with a family member's name. "I'm saying that I'm giving each of you exactly what you've asked for." I handed David his envelope first. David, you wanted me to move to an expensive assisted living facility in Seattle. Inside that envelope is a check for $50,000, enough to cover the deposit and first year's fees for the facility you recommended. His eyes widened as he opened it. The check was real. Sandra, I continued, handing her an envelope. You wrote me a beautiful letter about investing in the family's future. That's a check for $75,000 toward your dream house with the separate wing for me. Sandra's hands trembled as she examined her check. I handed Rosa her envelope. Rosa, you mentioned how wonderful it would be if we could travel together like we always talked about. That's enough for both of us to take that European cruise you described. One by one, I distributed the envelopes. Jennifer received money for the financial planning services she had offered to coordinate. Even Avalon received a check, ostensibly for family expenses and the children's future education. The room was silent except for the sound of paper rustling as they examined their windfalls. There's just one condition, I said finally. They all looked up, suddenly wary. You have to choose. You can keep the money and leave me alone, or you can return it and prove that you want a relationship with me, not my bank account. The silence stretched on. I could see the internal calculations happening behind their eyes, the mental math of weighing greed against guilt. You have until tomorrow evening to decide, I continued. Bring the checks back if you choose family over money. Keep them if money matters more. As they filed out of my apartment, checks clutched in their hands, no one met my eyes, no one said goodbye. I knew I would have my answer soon enough, and I suspected it wouldn't surprise me at all. Monday evening came and went without a single returned check. Tuesday brought only silence. By Wednesday, I had my answer, and it came not through noble gestures or heartfelt apologies, but through the small actions that revealed their true characters. David posted photos on social media of him and Jennifer touring expensive houses in Seattle's waterfront district, captioned, "New adventures ahead." Sandra was suddenly driving a newer BMW. Not brand new, but significantly more expensive than her previous car. Rosa called to tell me she had booked the European cruise and was so excited to finally live her dreams. None of them returned my calls. The only person who appeared at my door was Avalon, and she came Thursday evening looking haggard and conflicted. Unlike the others, she hadn't spent her money yet. The check still sat unopened in her purse. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I let her in, noting how she seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her choice. "I haven't cashed it," she said immediately, pulling out the envelope. "I keep starting to, then stopping. I keep thinking about what you said." We sat across from each other in my living room, the unopened check between us like a test neither of us wanted to take. "Sandra cashed hers," Avalon continued. "She said you were being manipulative, using money to control us. David called you bitter and vindictive. And what do you think?" Avalon was quiet for a long time, staring at the envelope. "I think you're tired of being taken for granted. I think you wanted to see who we really are when there's something at stake." It was the most honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years. "Avalon," I said gently, "what happened that day when Sandra screamed at me?" She flinched. "You know what happened." "No, I mean what really happened. Not the version you've been telling yourself to feel better about it." Tears began to form in her eyes. "You were trying to help Lucas and you stumbled. Sandra completely overreacted. And instead of defending you, I took the easy way out. I chose to preserve peace in my marriage instead of protecting my mother. The admission hung between us, raw and painful. And why did you make that choice?" "Because," she struggled with the words, "because it was easier to lose you than to fight with Sandra. Because you've always been strong, and I thought you could handle it. Because I'm a coward." I reached across and took her hand. "You're not a coward, Mija. You're human. We all make choices that protect what feels most fragile in our lives." "But I chose wrong," she whispered. "And now I don't know how to choose right." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the successful adult who had disappointed me, but the scared 12-year-old girl who had watched her father walk away and learned that the people you love most can abandon you without warning. "Avalon," I said softly, "keep the check." Her eyes widened. "What?" "Keep it. But not because I'm buying your love or because money matters more than family. Keep it because you're my daughter, and I want you to have security. I want you to know that no matter what happens with Sandra, No matter what choices you make, you'll be okay. She started crying then, deep sobs that seemed to come from years of buried guilt and fear. I don't deserve it, she choked out. I treated you horribly. You treated me like someone who would always be there no matter how badly you behaved, I corrected. And you were right. I will always be here for you. But from now on, it's going to be on different terms. Over the next hour, we talked more honestly than we had in decades. Avalon admitted that Sandra had been jealous of our relationship from the beginning, constantly finding ways to create distance between us. She confessed that she had been afraid to stand up to her wife because their marriage felt so fragile after Sandra's previous infidelity. I thought if I just kept everyone happy, everything would work out, she said. But instead, I lost the most important person in my life. You didn't lose me, I assured her. But you can't have both versions of me anymore. The convenient grandmother who appears when needed and disappears when inconvenient. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be real. She nodded, wiping her eyes. What does that look like? It looks like boundaries, I said firmly. It looks like respect. It looks like you standing up for me when Sandra or anyone else treats me poorly. And it looks like honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. And if I can't do that, then you'll have a very expensive check to remember me by. The next morning, I began the process of creating my new life. I called Margaret Santos and had her draft legal documents establishing clear boundaries around my finances and living arrangements. No one would be managing my money or making decisions about my care without my explicit consent. I purchased a small house in a retirement community 40 minutes outside the city, close enough to maintain relationships with those who proved worthy, far enough to discourage casual manipulation. It had a garden where I could grow vegetables, a screened porch where I could read in peace, and guest rooms for visitors who came for the right reasons. Most importantly, it was mine. Completely, legally, irrevocably mine. 6 months later, my new life had settled into a rhythm that surprised me with its richness. Avalon visited every other weekend, sometimes with the children, sometimes alone. Our relationship was different now, more careful, but also more genuine. Sandra had initially resented the new boundaries, but she had learned to respect them when it became clear that disrespecting me meant losing access to the financial security I had provided her family. The children adapted quickly to our new dynamic. Emma, now 6, loved helping me in the garden, and Lucas had discovered a passion for the puzzle games I kept at the house. They called my home Abuela's Castle, and to them, it was simply another place where they were loved and welcomed. David sent Christmas cards from Seattle but never called. Rosa sent postcards from her European cruise, filled with cheerful updates about her adventures, but never mentioning our relationship. I felt no sadness about their absence. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. Mrs. Rodriguez from my old apartment building visited often, bringing lottery tickets and gossip from the neighborhood. She had become my closest friend. The one person who had known me before the money and cared about me exactly the same after. Do you ever regret it? She asked one afternoon, as we sat on my screened porch watching the sunset. The test you gave them? I thought about it seriously before answering. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret learning the truth. And Avalon? Do you trust her now? I trust her to be human, I said, to make mistakes and try to do better. That's all any of us can do. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. A lottery ticket bought on impulse had given me more than money. It had given me clarity, independence, and most surprisingly, peace. I was 72 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I wanted to be, surrounded by people who chose to be there rather than people who felt obligated. The phone rang inside the house, and through the window, I could see Avalon's name on the caller ID. I smiled and went to answer it, knowing that this call, like all our interactions now, would be genuine. Hi, Mija, I said, settling into my favorite chair. Hi, Mom. I was wondering if you'd like company this weekend. Just me. Sandra's going to visit her sister. I'd love that, I replied, and meant it completely. Outside, the evening air carried the scent of jasmine from my garden, and in the distance, I could hear children playing in the community pool. It was the sound of life continuing, moving forward, creating new possibilities. At 72, I had finally learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you love is refuse to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, demanding respect, and walking away from those who take your devotion for granted. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means building something new and beautiful from the ashes of what came before. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.